Hello, everybody. Uh, Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Let's see. Oh boy, I have to make some notes here because I'm seeing lots of people coming online. This is great. Oh, I have no pens in this room. Okay, I'll be right back. You can watch my watch the 3D printer work. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Great to see you all, and hope everybody's doing okay out there. Uh, I've got myself that's a gorilla skull that's being made. So I showed you my chimpanzee skull earlier. So now it's a gorilla, and you can see the size is significantly larger. So that's pretty exciting for me. Um, I'm running it at a much faster rate, so I'm excited to see what happens. So far, it looks great. It looks really nice. Okay, cool. Borrowed that from the school. Pretty excited about it. We've been doing ecology, so let's get back into that. Hopefully that's going well. I'm trying to prepare a online form for you to fill out for the chemistry unit. So hopefully that will have a little bit of naming and everything on it. I won't be really able to control how long it takes you to do it or what resources you use. So we'll try to. Uh, we'll just, I'll leave it out there in the wild, and you can answer as much or as little of it as you like. I'll try to do all of it, please, and we'll see how that goes. All right. So we were talking about ecology yesterday, and how ecology is really, it's really about the transfer of energy. How does a group of organisms transfer energy between them? Do they is the and one of the things we realized was that energy gets transferred um, not particularly efficiently. So we start with organisms like plants. Those are the ones who produce energy for the rest of the system, the rest of the organisms in our ecology. Oh, excuse me. So plants will produce energy by taking sunlight and using that sunlight to produce sugars and starches and other plant features like that, or other edible parts to the plant. And then the consumers, particularly the primary consumers, so primary consumers are the ones who directly consume the producers. So these primary consumers, they consume the producers and then incorporate the energy from those producers into their own bodies. Now that their bodies are growing and full of energy, they can be consumed by the secondary consumer. So the secondary consumer here is one that is are those that consume mostly mostly primary consumers for energy. And then there's even tertiary consumers that will consume some secondary consumers for energy as well. Human beings, we typically fall into the secondary consumer range because we usually consume a combination of plants and animal. We often are accused of being omnivores, but that's not necessarily the case, especially not today where we have access to lots of fruits and vegetables, of varieties of forms, and so we do have a wide number of individuals who go vegetarian or vegan, and those ones have actually lowered themselves down on the pyramid to the lower trophic level. Trophic means eating level. So in this example here, we have a period of numbers, and I was actually looking at whether this was the right period of numbers I wanted, but I didn't look it up, and so we will just throw that out there. Let's just check out a period of number. What is it? Pyramid of numbers. Ecology. Ecology. Let's see if we can find one that says something different. This is more what I was looking for. That's the period of numbers. Okay, so that's a period of numbers. What does this one say? Yeah, okay, that's the same period of numbers. It's nothing about, well, that's a lot of shrimp ones. Let's look at this period of numbers here. Yeah, okay. So this is actually the period of numbers we want to think about. Yeah, this is straight up period of numbers. This one above us is actually a pyramid of, let's see, looks like a pyramid of energy, I think. A period of biomass. So this appears to be, this is a pyramid of biomass. So in the pyramid of numbers, we typically are just counting. So that's why I wanted to make a change there. So in the pyramid of numbers, we were, just wanted to write a 6 here. Okay. So the pyramid of biomass is measuring by mass. We were on page 7. I'm just going through a little review right now of the previous sections. So the pyramid of numbers is just going to measure out just raw numbers of organisms. So we should notice that the number of organisms decreases as we go up. So here's an example in grasslands over here. You can see that we have a ton of little plants on the ground, and then we have, I think that's supposed to be frogs. It's a really poor quality image. And then we have a primary carnivore or primary consumer who would be maybe these voles that eat frogs. And I don't even know what that secondary one's supposed to be. Or as like in this other example, we have fish that are getting bigger and bigger until we get to the bird that eats all the types of fish. And the top carnivore eats everything. Human beings are sometimes the top carnivore, of course. They do sometimes eat everybody. Here's another example where we have lots and lots of shrimp who are actually eating tons and tons of algae and microscopic organisms, which is also another example. Then we talk about pyramid of biomass. Biomass is just how much dry weight. This means if you took an organism and you sort of dried out all the water, how much would it weigh? All of that weight is from energy that it consumed and converted into its cells. So if you compare just the raw amount of mass that there is at each of the trophic levels, then that mass decreases every trophic level. If we look at a pyramid of energy, then the amount of energy that's available to make each of these organisms is decreasing as well. So, for example, for producers, we can only get about 10,000 joules worth of producer created from the 1 million joules that hit the sun. The primary consumers can only use about 1,000 joules of the 10,000 joules that were made by the producers. Those primary consumers can only donate 100 joules to the next and 10 joules to the final. So there's a decrease in energy. So one of the questions I want to pose to you is what's the implication of this? So we're going to go through, we'll do a little bit of a example here. So complete the energy pyramid diagram with examples of organisms that might live in the Manitoba prairies. So we're going to fill this in. So organisms use the energy released in the food chain to power all of their daily activities through the process of chemical respiration, or is that what we called it? Cellular respiration. This is something that we don't often think about, which is that even plants are undergoing chemical respiration. Even the plants have to use up the sugars that they make themselves, and use that sugar and break it down. So here we're going to have we're going to take 6 oxygens plus sugar, which is C6H12O6. And we're going to produce H2O, CO2, and energy. The food chain is a series of events in which one organism eats another and obtains energy. Each level is called a trophic level, and the food web is many overlapping food chains in an ecosystem. So a chain is just a simple link, or like a cycle. One organism eats the other, eats the other, eats the other, and then that one gets consumed by the detrivores and decomposers. And so if you can connect many different food chains together, you get what's called a food web. Okay. Remember, you can always pause if you need to. We're going to go back to the bottom of the picture, and then we'll come back up as we go. So the sun, the cycle begins with light energy from the sun. And that process takes 6 carbon dioxides plus 6 waters plus sunlight and chlorophyll, and it produces a sugar, C6O6H12. I think I did that in a different order a second ago, so let's just be consistent. H12O6, and 6 oxygen molecules. And that's that whole idea that plants make oxygen. This is sugar and oxygen. So isn't that nice of plants? They not only produce the sugar that we need to consume and to survive, but they also produce the oxygen we need to consume that sugar. So producers, they make food, or as we call it, energy, using the sun's energy through photosynthesis. And so a good example of a plant in Manitoba in the prairies, probably grass, prairie grasses, prairie grasses, maybe flowers, wildflowers. We've got shrubs, some trees, I guess, as well. Trees are a bit slower for getting energy out there, but they do produce it. So then we have the primary consumer. These eat producers, or plants in this case, and they can be an omnivore or herbivore. Wheat, yeah. I was debating about wheat. I wasn't sure if that is a natural plant or if that's from our farming habits. I suppose. And wheat is a type of grass, so that was my other idea. I try not to think. I'm trying to avoid thinking about uh, former grasslands. Speargrass, wheatgrass, and blue grama grass. Okay, yeah. So our prairies would have normally been, uh, yeah, native wheatgrasses. That makes sense. Probably why everybody wanted to move here, right? So a primary consumer. So what's a good example of an omnivore? Mostly eats an omnivore or herbivore that would be common in our prairies, and that would eat prairie grasses. Mice. Prairie. Yeah, okay. Deer. Yeah, cattle. If we're thinking about, if we try to think about things that humans didn't bring over, or that humans didn't interfere with, or particularly what Europeans didn't bring over, we could think about bison. Bison would have been a natural or a an indigenous animal to Canada, to Manitoba. Horses are also something that was brought over by the Spanish in the 1800s, 17, 1800s. So they wouldn't have been indigenous to the Manitoba prairies. They're an invasive species to be exact, I guess. Um, but they are definitely out there now. We don't have too many wild horses in Manitoba, for example. In the southern prairies, so like in Nevada, I guess, something like that. Well, it's scrublands, but yeah, there definitely are horses out there. Um, Trying to consider what would have been in Manitoba prior to European settlement, or not settlement. I don't like European conquest. No, European invasion. Yeah, prior to European invasion, what would have been here? Elk was also common in Canada, in the prairies. So those are a couple of interesting examples. lots of mice and things like that. Now, a secondary consumer is a carnivore or omnivore that eats the primary consumer. So this can be some fun ones. We still not talking about a top competitor here, but we are talking about something that regularly eats from the line below. So we might be thinking about maybe foxes. Foxes are our natural to all continents. There's also in particularly in Saskatchewan, they had ferrets. They had the black-footed ferret, black-footed ferret, and other things like larger versions like the mink or skunk. Skunks are probably a good example. They don't get messed around with too much. What's another one that might be in that middle range for the prairies? Prairie carnivores. Oh, the raccoon. That's a good one. Raccoon. I really like this picture of this. See if that works. I'm a big fan of ferrets. I'm just going to open this up here. I have a very cute picture of a ferret. So here's a black-footed ferret. They're a little bit larger than the domesticated ferret. Give me a second here. And they're very cute, but also very dangerous. Like they're pretty, ferrets in general aren't the best pets. So these black-footed ones were little bitey guys. They've just recently succeeded in reintroducing them into Saskatchewan's ecology. No, we're good. All right, I'm plugged right in. Yeah. So yeah, so black-footed ferrets were actually reintroduced into Saskatchewan's ecology, and they were successfully able to recover the endangered species, and they're being used as a way of reducing the amount of prairie dog, which is a great example of a primary consumer, the prairie dog. The prairie dog population, which was out of hand. They're not quite as large and dangerous as foxes, and so I suppose that's why. And prairie dogs are one of their prey. The black-footed ferret loves to eat a good prairie dog. They can take them down. I think there's something about them working in teams, sort of similar to the raptors in Jurassic Park or something. They actually will sort of work together to round up a prairie dog, and they're long and narrow, and they can go down the holes, and they're just really nasty little vicious things. I used to own ferrets, and I know how that even the domesticated ferret was particularly they could be quite sweet, but they can also have some natural tendencies that are kind of fun. Okay. So the tertiary consumer, these are anything that's going to eat secondary or primary consumers. They are called the top of the food chain, right? I can't think of another word than top of the food chain. Oh, beavers. Beavers are good. They're I don't know, are beavers omnivores or herbivores? That's a great example, though. That's definitely a great national resource. Beaver are their semi-aquatic rodent, and yeah, and I love the beaver. I mean, what a great animal. Uh, Although I know that if you were a farmer, they can be a real pain as they will cause flooding and things. What is their food? Eat. Great. They do not hibernate. They store sticks and logs in a pile, eating the underbark. So it looks like they mostly eat wood. I They eat cattails, water lilies, and aquatic vegetation. So yeah, so they're a herbivore. Huh. I guess that makes sense. I know they have the big teeth for it. Let's put that in this early pile here. So that'll be down here. Beaver. Yeah. Love a good beaver. Never mind. I the beaver are very adorable animals with yeah. Okay. So at the top of our food chain in the prairies, we of course have bears, and we have bears. We have other alpha predators like the hawk. So hawks are, there's not much that's eating a hawk. Hawks are mostly eating from the other things. They'll eat a good ferret, etc. What else is at the top of the food chain in the prairies? Primary consumers. We got the prairie dogs, grasshoppers. Oh, here I found a whole website about this. But what's the top here? That's a good point. We did not talk about anything that is eating rattlesnakes. We don't really get rattlesnakes in Manitoba prairies. We do get coyote, I guess, a little bit. Wolf. We probably have a couple of wolves. Humans, yeah, we got humans. That's true. I was trying to think. Well, heck, humans have been here for, uh, up to 30,000 years. They guess they deserve to be on top of the list. Yeah. So let's put humans. That's good point. You deserve to be on top. I was thinking about animal, but we're why am I saying we're not animals? Okay, wolves. Um, Trying to think about Manitoba prairies, not American prairies. We don't really. I don't know if there were really snake species prior to any of the to you know European establishment, I guess, invasion. Um, so I think that probably covers. That's a good range, anyways. There's probably other birds that I don't know. I'm not great on birds. Eagle, we definitely have eagles. Um, Hawks, yeah, that's probably good. And one thing we haven't put in here is bugs. So we do have to consider that prairie dogs, for example, are eating a lot of bugs. So we could have things like grasshoppers. I agree that we should consider humans an animal and we should include them in our pyramid. You caught me, Scott. You're right. We got to get those humans in there. It's also important to always acknowledge our spot and our role in this pyramid as well. Okay, so decomposers, are the ones who are going to do the breakdown here. So they're going to break down living material or dead material. Let's call it dead material, and release the nutrients into the soil. They don't release much energy into the soil, but they do release nutrients that are important for producing more. So living organisms. So scavengers, these are carnivores that um, that that consume, that prey on, I guess prey on dead organisms. So we have the decomposers. These would also be, we also use the word detrivores earlier in our booklet. So some good detrivores that we have are always fungi. Fungi are a really strong decomposer. We have a lot of bacteria. And we also have a couple of birds like crows. You know, crows love a good dead meal. Um, and that's probably good. Oh, we got earthworms. I feel like now I want to put in. Let's put in our garter snakes too. Here. Okay. Fungi, bacteria, earthworms. There's other bugs, of course, that are involved. Flies. Flies are a good example. Flies? Flies like to lay their eggs in dead things, including including, you know, feces and etc. And that's our diagram. So that's sort of that's what's going on in our neighborhood. And you know, as now modern humans with modern technology, we typically go in here and we mess it all up by you know, we overhunt the beaver, overhunt the bisons, which ruins the scale. We hunt foxes and wolves so that they no longer steal our you know, they no longer attack our herds of domesticated animals, and then that lets the other animals grow faster, and so then we have an overpopulation of deer and prairie dogs, etc., because of we disturbed the triangle. Okay. So let's talk about some of the implications here. One of the implications I like to talk about, even though I'm not actually a vegetarian myself, I do try to eat a little bit more vegetarian after I thought about this unit. So I actually honestly changed my eating habits a little bit after thinking about this process when I was writing up this unit the first time. So if you think about this energy pyramid, a human typically could eat, you know, like let's say that a human eating one cow and how much energy that would be. So, you know, one cow maybe provides you enough energy for a season if you ate all of its meat and you had, you know, reasonable, you know, portions. Um, so if a person needs 3,000 calories per day to survive, that's pretty high, honestly. I mean, most people, I think most diets now are around 2,000 calories, but let's just go with this. And they want to only eat beef, then 30,000 calories of beef are needed. So we actually need the animal. We need the animal to grow 30,000 calories worth of beef, and then when we go to harvest from the cow for the meal that we want to consume, we'll only be harvesting 10% of the energy back. So the cow is going to use up 30,000 calories, but we are in its processes of growing, of digesting, of walking around, breathing, all those sort of factors. Those are all things that a cow is doing every day that waste energy. So just living uses up energy. So that cow is going to use up 30,000 calories of energy, and we are going to get one steak that's worth, or you know, a steak or so that's worth 3,000 calories out of that 30,000 calories that we put into the cow. Now, in order for that cow to get that 30,000 calories it needs to survive, it has to consume 300,000 calories worth of corn, because that's a 10% of the corn. So that means that this is corn that required a whole bunch of energy to grow, and a bunch of water provided for it, and a bunch of other factors that went into creating this 30,000 we put in 30,000 calories into the corn, and then the cow gets 300,000 calories into the corn. The cow gets 30,000 calories out. And for that corn to grow up to that 300,000 calories, it of course needed to consume, or needed to be exposed to 3 million calories of sunlight. Now, that's the best part, is sunlight's free. It's always going to come to the earth unless we interfere with it by changing our atmosphere. But otherwise, those calories from the sun are going to be free calories. So this works out that for one person to have a 3,000 calorie diet per day, and if they wanted to eat cow only, so if they're a strict carnivore, they are going to use up 1.5 acres of corn per day in the equivalence, right? So 1 acre of corn here, so this is our 1.5 acres of corn. I'll use a color you can see. 1.5 acres of corn, which gives us a 30,000 calories of cow, and then that will feed this man his 3,000 calorie day per day. Now, if we play around with this, what if we just take that old man there, and who eats 3,000 calories per day, so he probably has really high cholesterol count at this point if he's eating 3,000 calories and it's all from beef. But anyways, let's let that one guy eat only corn instead. If he went to just eating corn, then we could feed him for 10 days. Because because the corn produces that 30,000 calories for that cow. So in place of this, in this place here, right, we could feed all of these dudes. So we get 10 people worth, because these 10 people each only need 3,000 calories. So 30,000 calories is 10 individuals. So 3,000 calories per individual. So now let's zoom out and think about the global issues here. We have global problems of food shortage around the world. Where could we make changes that might improve the amount of energy distribution around the world? One example is reduction of that one man. So if that man did not require 3,000 calories, but instead required, say, 1,500 calories, then one cow would be able to feed him for 2 days instead of 1 day. So that would be a super good change that he could make. Another option is if he starts to eat more vegetables. If he supplements his diet with a higher amount of vegetables, then he's becoming more of a primary consumer. And as more of a primary consumer, just mathematically, he's reducing his impact on the planet. So he's reducing the amount of of livestock that has to be grown to feed him. So that's one. If you're looking for a reason to pursue a vegetarian diet of some sort, or to increase the amount of vegetables you want to eat, in addition to all of the other benefits, like the National Food Guide now is half vegetables and a quarter nuts or something, and then a little bit of something else. So if we want to increase our not only just for health reasons to increase more vegetables, but you can also feel good about eating more vegetables and fruits by the fact that they have a lower they bring you closer to the primary consumer level, which means that the amount of energy transferred between the food to your mouth was lower. So you're increasing that ability. So, these numbers are a little bit skewed towards giving you that message, but they are a good approximation. It's also a good approximation to note that the amount of pollution that is produced is usually correlated very strongly with the amount of energy required to make that food. So the more energy put in to make food, the more pollution that it requires, and that includes energy put into farm life. So livestock, they do produce pollution. So I'm going to put a little note here. Uh, this includes livestock who are a high level polluter. So both cows produce a lot of methane through their digestion. When they digest these plants, they are producing a lot of gases off of those. So example, digestion of plants produces methane in most herbivores. Herbivores. Herbivores? Herbivores. Which is a greenhouse gas. So if we can reduce the amount of animal consumption, then we will have a byproduct of reducing the amount of plants or of greenhouse gas. Another idea is that livestock, or it also energy put into transport or preparation equals higher pollution potential. So example, pre-processed foods will have higher pollution impacts, or food including fruits and vegetables from far away, like blueberries or even strawberries right now, or exotic fruits. So, we can't get away from pollution. Anything you do produces pollution, but there are a couple of options out there for reducing the amount of pollution. So one of those options is to eat more vegetables, to eat local. So so we don't want to just eat local. We don't want to just eat vegetables, and fruit, but also eat more locally sourced foods, sourced and less processed foods. So, if we actually took the numbers, we started doing the numbers on running numbers on, say, a steak versus some almonds, for example, you might actually find that the almonds are equally as bad as a steak for the environment, because that steak might come from a farm in Manitoba versus a bunch of almonds that were grown in California, where almonds are pretty inefficient plants. They require a lot of water, they require a lot of they require a lot of fertilizers and things like that to grow, compared to compared to a steak which could have been grown locally, where the land is fairly supportive of that animal, and has minimal impact. Now, it's still, if you could have chosen to eat some locally sourced, wild rice instead of a steak, then the wild rice is probably going to beat both of those options, because the wild rice is also locally sourced, also naturally growing, also less impact on the environment, all that sort of stuff. So eating foods that are native to the environment is going to be very helpful. So wild rices and grasses that are found here and natural to the soils here, those are going to be better for our environment. Fish are going to be a little bit better if they're not from industrial fishing, etc. But this is all, we only can do our part. We can't we don't all need to change our diets immediately. We don't all need to do, but if we can make some educated choices, then maybe together, everybody making educated choices is going to overall reduce the impact on our environment. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So I'll give you some examples of things we can do. So eating more low energy foods, that's usually plants, not necessarily. Some plants are high energy. Lots of berries are pretty high energy. This means foods that are easy to produce and provide good nutrition. So for most beans are very easy to produce, and they're also high in protein as meats. So beans are a good substitution. We can grow beans in almost everywhere in North America. Maybe not in northern climates, but in the prairies at least, beans grow fairly easily. Easily grown means less energy put in, right? The more that the farmer has to be careful and apply water and pump in excess, fertilizers and things, the worse it is. So not all vegetables are equal. So here's my almond example. Almonds are high in energy, but they're also high cost. And almond milk, for example, requires a large amount of water and energy to make. So much more energy goes in than in the production of milk. So if you're choosing almond milk over cow milk, because you're feeling it's better for the environment, almond milk requires a lot more water and energy than the animal milk. Now, you might have other reasons for not wanting to drink animal milk. Of course, the milk industry has its own problems that people have their own issues against, like the conditions that animals are kept in. I will leave that one to the side. My family, unfortunately, I don't know. I don't even know anymore. But my family does drink a lot of milk. We have little guys at home who love it. So, but I have not bought almond milk since I thought about the energy costs of making it. Um, Also note that organic food processing and production typically increase the cost, but they may reduce the ecological costs. So in ecology, the study is sort of going to be a lot of balancing acts. So we have in one case, the organic foods have less impact on the environment because they use less pesticides or they use less dangerous pesticides, but they typically require more water. They take up more land because you have to make space so that you can pick weeds and stuff that you normally could spray for in a non-organic example, and so they can end up using up more resources, but with with some added benefits. Meanwhile, something like wheat. Wheat grows very easily. We have lots of very good genetically modified wheats that are easier to grow, easier to and require less energy to grow. So those wheats typically have a lower impact on the environment than, say, organic wheat. Something that already requires lots of energy, like blueberries, it actually doesn't seem to make much of a difference in terms of the environmental cost of blueberries versus organic blueberries, because blueberries are already hard to grow. So the little extra effort to grow organic blueberries doesn't really make an impact on the environment. So then you just get the benefits of the organic aspect of it. A label I do not like. I hate from a chemistry perspective, organic means a whole different thing. But anyways, I'm not going to get on that on that high horse yet. So we can also eat low impact foods and high density foods. So for example, corn and milk and cheese, they all have pretty high energy efficiencies. Meanwhile, things like beef has a lower efficiency than chicken. So choosing more chicken over beef, that could be another way you could increase your efficiency. Cows really have to grow to a certain size before they're useful. That means more energy has to go into them before we can harvest their meat. Chickens, they grow faster. That means less energy put in before you get to harvest. Cheeses, milk, and eggs, those all comes from animals that can produce more, right? So chickens can produce eggs every day. Cheese can come from a cow for many, many years. So we don't have to reinvest energy in growing a new cow all the time. So that's why milk and cheese will have higher efficiency. But then see that corn. Look how high that efficiency is of corn, right? So some of those crops are going to be way higher in efficiency than any animal crop is going to be. Apples, not so much, right? Genetic modification is also an option. I'm a big proponent for genetic modification. I like the idea. I think we're being very smart with our use of it. And so through that, we could also see the increase in efficiency by small changes to their genetics. We can make plants be able to produce more fruit or fruit that is more efficient. Also, the ability to avoid having to use pesticides and insecticides and things on our plants. That would be a valuable resource because those have environmental impacts as well. When we're talking about genetic modification, these are not huge changes to the plant. We're usually taking in a single protein and putting it in the plant. That would be a protein that you would normally eat, but just in a different plant. So please try to, no images of the big needle going into the cell or anything. Or into the plant. All we're doing usually in genetic modification is one very small change, making a little mutant. Mutants are born every day. Sometimes, you could be very simple things. Simple mutations happen all the time. We're just using in genetic modification where we're causing those mutations to happen in a controlled way, which is actually better than some of the techniques that we've used in the past, which would cause massive mutations without control. You can sort of ruminate on this last image here. This is the ecological impact. So how many calories you're getting out of something for how much water you have to put in, how much CO2 gets put out, how much land you have to use, and how much grain that you have to feed them in terms of kilograms. So you can see that that you do get more energy out of a beef, but look at how much water you have to sacrifice for that. Look at how much CO2. So everything comes at a cost. Eggs come at a higher cost for land use, but with a lower cost for water, right? And then a lower energy cost. So there's a lot of back and forth balancing acts in ecological considerations. I'm going to let you think about this one. Tomorrow we will have another class on ecology, and I will also be posting an interactive sort of test for your sort of test. I hate the word test, you know I hate it, but an assessment, a chance for you to show off what you learned in the chemistry unit. So that'll be all of the chemistry unit from book 1 to book 3. Maybe a little bit more of book 2 and 3 because we actually kind of did a lot of book 1 already. So we'll probably focus on book 2 and 3 instead. So that'll be like the naming, chemical balancing, and what else do we do? Oh, and acids and bases. So that'll be tomorrow. That'll be posted tomorrow. You can start it it'll once it's opened, you can start it anytime you want. I will have it so that you can't edit your answers once you put them in. So please make sure you know what they are before you put them in. Anyways, that will be tomorrow. So I'll meet you back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. And otherwise, have yourselves a great day, okay? And stay safe out there.